Welcome back to Next Chapter. I'm Marty, and this is Jaden. We just finished watching The Three-Body Problem. We'll be going through our review and our thoughts on it from a perspective of people who have read the book, and we'll be going through a spoiler-free review first, and then jumping into a spoiler version.
So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check out the spoiler-free section. We will let you know before we dive into any spoilers, so we don't ruin it for you. And if you have seen it already, you want to go straight into the spoilery section. The timestamp for that is in the description below, so check it out. But let's dive right into it. First off, we're not talking spoilers for this first part, but what did you think overall? Having read the book, and do you think the book helped you before you watched the series? Do you think it was good to have read it first?
Yeah, I'll give my most vague terms about everything. I thought the show was fine overall. Yeah. I was trying to look at it from two different perspectives. A perspective of what would have I thought if I had never read the book. I just constantly was trying to think what are people thinking if they had not read this book? And then from my perspective of having read the book, this happens quite often when you've read a book. You start thinking, oh, they missed this, they missed that.
Oh, I do that all the time.
I know. And and I'm okay with that. They can make changes with those things. Lord of the Rings did a great job.
Artistic license.
Yes, Dune did a great job. But this TV show, I feel like it made some changes in the wrong place. This may be because I have not read all three books. I have read the first book and half of the second book, which actually played out perfectly for this show. I'd recommend doing it for everyone.
You planned that very well. I only read the first book, and I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
When we get to our spoiler section, for sure, I'll mention that.
Yeah, and it was just it was very hard for me to just look at it and just feel good about it from either perspective. I thought it was fine. It wasn't terrible, but it was fine. First thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. I think in general, my terms that I would say for the series are a little bit confusing, and I felt also there were instances of just complexity that I think made it more exciting, but also depending on the person watching the show might be less interested because of it. Or let's get back to should I have read the book first? I think the book definitely helped. It helped me get through a lot of the confusing stuff, more of the technical elements. If you don't know already, Three-Body Problem was originally written in Chinese. It was translated. And then it also has very, very deep into technical topics. It's a sci-fi, but it's a very technical sci-fi as compared to others that are just more fantastic or fantasy-based.
Technical as in very science-based.
Yeah, rooted in science. Yeah, absolutely.
Very much based into science theory and such, which sounds like, wow, is that boring or such? But no, the way that the book presents it is so fascinating. I'm not a science major. I did not study the sciences. I'm a finance guy. But I found this, it just opened up my mind to a whole new world of physics and the world out there. And I just thought it was fantastic.
I loved the concepts of the story where it does lead you to investigate a little bit more. So it wants you to think, okay, think deeper on this problem, this issue, this technical complex problem they're trying to solve. Maybe you can try and figure it out along with them. I think they did a really good job of that in both the book and the series. A little bit of just oh, this is a really big problem. We need to figure it out with science. Yep. Versus this is a really big problem. You just have to wait for the solution. If that makes sense. They give you a little bit of room to think about it yourself.
And now that I think about it, my first thoughts with it were from the show was that I didn't feel like it hit the science as well as the book did. But now, with you seeing them, actually it did. So the book, the feeling that I liked from it, and this is what I hope most movies and TV shows will do. It'll capture the feeling and essence of a book. And the feeling and essence I got from the Three-Body Problem book was that you just have the feeling of wonder about science and the world and everything. And this show does provide that a little bit. There are a few scenes in there that are wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that with science or all these things. And it was pretty cool. But I feel like the book hits that home way harder than the TV show does.
Yeah, I think as far as spoiler-free reviews go, it's difficult to toe that line sometimes.
Yes.
Would you say this is a pay for Netflix for a month to watch this series? Or is it if you already have Netflix, go ahead and watch it? Or a totally avoid?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say I probably wouldn't go out of my way to go and watch the show.
Yep.
I probably wouldn't tell anyone to go out of their way to watch the show. Hopefully it picks up in the next seasons. I've heard that.
Have they renewed that? I don't know if they have.
Oh, I kind of think they have. from what I've seen on like commenters and things like that from our previous videos, they were saying that if you've read the whole series, this first season really sets up well for a strong following seasons.
Interesting.
And I'm like, that's really cool. So it makes me excited about that. Makes me excited to read the future books to like get that perspective as well. So, I mean, if maybe not this year, maybe we'll watch the second season and tell you like, you got to watch it and you got to start from there. And
yeah.
so
I would agree with that. I think if you have Netflix and you're like, oh, we try to find good shows to watch, I would recommend it to someone. They're like, hey, if you're looking for something to watch, it's kind of entertaining, pretty fun. Yeah. Maybe it'll coerce you to read the book because I think the book is a little bit better personally.
Yeah.
But I do have one more spoiler-free discussion topic that I wanted to ask you about, specifically because this book was written in Chinese. It has a lot of Chinese culture. It's all based in that world, right? Yep. The show, and it's not that big of a spoiler to say that the show is transplanted from where it was originally based in kind of the Beijing, China area into London. And a lot of the cast was changed as well from Chinese characters to characters from all over the world, a very diverse cast.
Yeah.
And I think in general, we're seeing a lot of diversity in a lot of the entertainment these days, and like even over top of originally written works, especially older works that were very like one race, one culture, one subset of people that did all of the actions in the book, to change that. So I'm curious your thoughts. I'll start with mine. And I did notice I don't know if it was a press release or just an interview or an article, but Benedict Wong, who's one of the characters in the show, he specifically talked about this. And he said one of the things that he loved about it is that they turned the story that was very culturally Chinese into a global story. So it was an intentional shift from this is one culture into this is like a story for everyone. And they just changed it. So they did intentionally do that so that it was more of a global story. I thought that was an interesting move, though. So I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, well, so what did you think? Like,
I think it wasn't necessary to make it a global story. I think when I read the book, and I read, obviously, a translated version, but it had all Chinese names, it had all that, and I still feel like I was very able to not only relate to the difficulties they were facing, but get a really good sense of the story. So I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah.
But
you got the sense still that it was a global event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just because all the names were difficult for me to pronounce doesn't mean that I didn't like understand who the different characters were and what they were doing. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like funny to put it in that context. It's like, yeah, like we moved it to a different place so you could make it feel global. Like they were all still in London. Like it was still one place. They just moved it from China to London.
That's true.
But, yeah, it was just the same idea. I don't know. I kind of feel the same way as you. I think that they could have pulled this off well with just a whole China-based experience. But I get it. Having read more of the second book, it does get a little bit more global than, actually a lot bit more global than the first book. But yeah, I think that it was probably an unnecessary change, but I think it was probably fine by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely not something that I would say takes away from the show. So if you're going to watch the show and you're like, oh, that's a red flag, it really isn't. They do a just fine job of adapting the storyline, adapting the characters to split things out and move things around as they need to. It's fine. It's an adaptation. I don't think it's a necessary one, but it's not one that I think takes away from the story. I just don't think it adds what they think it does, if that makes sense. So,
yep. Overall thoughts for a spoiler-free review. What do you think?
Overall spoiler-free review. Are we doing a rating or are we doing just impressions?
No rating. We'll just do impressions. Okay. Like tell them what they should do.
Impressions, I liked it. I think it was entertaining. I think overall for me, it was probably a little bit more gory than I was expecting it to be.
Yep.
There's a lot of, I think general violence, but that was just made especially gory.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it feels over the top. It feels unnecessary. I think that it just felt a little too forced. They're like, oh, we just need as much blood as possible to spurt out of this moment. I'm just like, really? I can appreciate all the effort that went into those scenes, but it seemed a little excessive. So there were some parts of it that I didn't like for that reason. It just kind of felt a little icky, some of those elements. But overall show, storyline, I really liked it. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, I'd give that something similar. And the book is not that way. At
least not the way I read it.
Yeah, seriously. At least it doesn't get in that much detail. But yeah, I'd feel the same way. I thought overall it was a pretty good show. Like something to check out, I think, and something that I'd still recommend the book over the show for. I'd almost tell you, like, you should read the book first so you don't have the book spoiled, and so that you can get that full experience before watching the show. But although it might not make you like the show as much if you
I don't think this is a spoiler. It's on the edge, but it's something that I feel like they hit all of the like climactic or climax points of the book, like just sequentially in the show. Yeah. So you're right. It would be a huge spoiler for the book to watch the show because you don't get like the chapters of buildup and confusion before a climax and like a big moment. Yep. You just get a big moment and then cutscene to the next big moment in the show.
For sure.
So it's like, it's kind of jarring in a sense, but I feel like that would really spoil the book for someone. So going to read the book after the show, I think, would be a mistake.
I think it takes
away... If you're planning on reading the book, read it first.
It takes away some of the effect of...
it really does.
Yeah.
It takes away some of the enjoyment of reading the book and discovering that through the book. Yep.
Yeah, really
We're
crazy.
Agreed. If you want to read the book, if you're thinking about reading the book, start with the book and then watch the show after.
For sure. Okay.
As a treat for finishing the book.
As a treat. He's like, I did it. So... let's jump into the spoiler section.
Welcome to spoilers.
Spoiler
If you're
section.
still watching and you have not seen the show, you have been well warned.
That's right.
If you're joining us, having already seen the show and you missed the spoiler-free section, welcome back. Let's dive into more specifics.
Yeah, so let's jump into some of the differences that we see right off the bat from the beginning.
Yeah.
So similarities and differences. This book and show, I feel like nailed the... whole Red Revolution with her father being killed at the beginning, beat on the stage, and then honestly her story leading up to when she first communicates with the Trisolarans, or the Santi as the TV show calls them. It diverges greatly in how the modern day stuff is taken.
Yep.
Whereas the book just has one character, and this one has like multiple and several.
It's a friend group, basically.
Yeah, it's a friend group. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that?
I think that confused me so bad at the beginning. You mentioned this in our spoiler-free section, but when you're watching a movie that you've seen or you read the book of, you're trying to like follow along. Okay, like where are we at? Where do I remember? How do I connect this? And I was like, who are these people? Yeah. Like, what am I missing? I don't understand. Like, there's different people who do different things that I thought was, like, supposed to be the same person. I'm, like, looking for the person. Like, is it this one? Is it not? But really, they did divide that role across multiple people. And I had heard from some folks that is a foreshadowing to future books. Is that accurate, or is it really just a split?
I haven't gone far enough. I don't think it's in the first half of the second book, so...
That is a limitation of ours, unfortunately. But commenters have free reign to let us know where we're at.
Yeah, don't spoil too much later,
don't spoil the books. Give me a head nod in the comments somehow.
Seriously.
I think that is something that really confused me right out the gate is the characters set up. I think the fact that they moved it to London, we talked about this in the spoiler-free section, confusing as well. I don't think it was necessary, but they did it anyway.
Yeah. So the biggest change that I noticed right off the bat that really bothered me, and it never changed throughout the whole season, and I was waiting for it to change the whole time. It was the whole fact that Wenjia, she in this TV show is made to seem like she is part of the religious cult that is worshiping the Santi, and that is completely opposite from the book.
She's their leader.
She's the leader, but in the book it makes it clear that there are two factions. There is a faction that is a religious cult, and then there is a faction that believes like her is that we need the Santi to come so they can wipe out the human race. We have no hope for them. We're not trying to bring them here to save the world. We're bringing them here to wipe them out. And that's what I want. And they never even come close to that in the TV show. And it really bothered me.
I think they missed a lot of that in her storyline right at the beginning. Because I think one of the most impactful scenes for me is when she like murders her, like the two people. Just like cuts the rope and drops them off the cliff.
Her husband.
Yeah.
So this is crazy.
But that doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen because it doesn't fit with the way that they changed the story for the show.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense for her to say, we're bringing these people here, the aliens here, to save our planet, to make a better world, to make the people better. No.
And she's just like, I just want the whole world wiped out.
Yep.
She's been traumatized so bad for her whole life.
She's willing
like,
to
it's
kill
over.
her own husband, which is the father of her child.
Yep.
Which is insane.
So the context is she's trying to kill someone who knew that she'd spoken to the aliens, but her husband got mixed up in it, and she's like, fine, he's dead too. He kills them both. She kills them both. Like that's like the level of just, everything is off for empathy in her brain completely. And I think that really exemplified, like that scene, you're just like, whoa, she is completely devoid of any sort of compassion and empathy. She's over it.
Yep, totally. And I don't know, you'll have to let me know if it bugged you as much as it bugged me, but every single time she made a comment about like her saying like our Lord, or like they're here to like she said like something equivalent of like they're gonna come here and make it a better place, I was like almost yelling at the screen like, you were not like that at all. Like at all in the books. And that was a major point for the book, because this show is, I think they were just trying to go really hard into making you feel like, oh, like maybe I can relate with the other side and see what they're thinking of, like they want the aliens to come. There is not that feeling in the book. In the book, you understand that these people are literal traitors to humanity. But it's
also, there's multiple factions in the book that you can recognize. Like you mentioned, there's not just the religious fanatic side of it, but it's also the give up on humanity side. But then there's also there's lots of different groups of people that feel differently about everything, like the Trisolarans, or the Santi coming.
Yep.
And it's that's another thing, Trisolarans versus Santi. And I recognize and I learned from the comments from our reaction video that it's the same thing, just in Chinese.
We're gonna make everything London in English except for their name, the TV show,
which was translated to Trisolarans in the book. It's fine, I guess. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
It was interesting to me. Yeah, so I think that's interesting. You don't have that multiple different factions. You have the religion and you have everybody else.
Yeah, it was just crazy to me. I just really, again, wish that like they, even in the show, they would say over and over again that like these people are traitors to us.
Yeah.
But you didn't feel that watching the show, because they're like, well, they're actually just trying to help the people. I'm like, no, like when you read the book, you understand they are traitors.
Absolutely. Okay, so talk to me about the game. This is one of my absolute favorite parts of the book. The whole novel is the 3-body game.
Yep.
What did you think about that in the series?
Okay, I liked it in the series. I think they did a good job at making the headset look super cool and the whole experience like look interesting. It had some creepy vibes to it and everything.
Yep.
But I will say, you've got to have loved this part. I think they nailed the human computer. How cool was that scene in the TV show?
I loved it. I loved it so much. I was probably waiting for the scene more than anything. Maybe the ship slicing a little bit more. But I was waiting for the human computer scene because I was like, how are they going to do it? What's it going to be like? I'm so excited. I wish they had spent more time on it. It was really, really fast. So I feel like if you didn't have the context of the book of like what it was about, why they had it, how it worked, and like they explained like the different sections of it in the book, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
But they didn't really do that. They're just like, hey, look, check it out. It's a bunch of people waving flags, and that's a computer. And like, I don't know. If you didn't have the context of either how a computer works or just the book, reading that part of the book, I feel like you would have just glossed right over that and been like, that's weird.
Yeah, I wonder like how people thought it.
I liked it, but I had read the book, so I had that context, but I still thought it was cool.
If you hadn't read the book, let us know about the parts of the show that were confusing to you or may have gone over your head. If that was one of the parts, let us know.
I have talked to people, and I really want to see the comments with their experiences, but I have talked to a couple people who have not read the books.
At work?
And people that have read the books. Yeah.
No way.
People that have not read the books, and maybe this is a unique experience, but were very confused. They were like, there's just too much complexity, like we're not really getting into it.
Overall for the whole show?
Overall for the whole series.
Yeah.
They were like, it's just a little bit, it's just like all of this stuff happening in different times, like you don't really know what's going on. And there are elements of that in a series in general where that's intentional. Where you're like, oh, it's, confusing, we don't really know what's going on, something's happening, but we don't know about it. But then just adding and adding and adding to that sometimes can turn off some viewers. And I think that happened.
Oh, totally.
At least for a couple of people. We'll see what the commenters say as well.
Oh, I'm so interested. Yeah, that I kind of feel like that must have happened to a lot of people. That's the sense I got when I was watching it. I'm like, man, I don't know if I could have followed this like if I hadn't read the book. But yeah, I loved how also the computer scene. Did you notice how they set them up to like in circuit board? Like,
I loved it.
Positions.
I loved
so
it. When
cool.
they zoom out and it looks like a circuit board. You're like,
yeah,
it's pretty darn cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Nice touch to it. But then they get out of the computer. Jack gets murdered.
Yes.
This is kind of a crazy scene. It makes the Santi seem like invincible and super hard to beat because you can't they can cover up screens, so like you can't see, like they're editing it live, so you can't see what's going on. They're also appearing in real life, like to people in front of their faces. And anyways, I thought that was an interesting, but.
And they make it feel like, is she an alien? Like the lady who murdered Jack, is she an alien? Is she a Santi? Or is she like, what's going on? How does this work? Yeah.
Yeah. And this
very eerie.
Yeah, very eerie. And this leads to the part where they go through all the discovery of what's going on. Jin finally goes and talks to the like British intelligence guy, tells him about it. They go into the game, and then the whole Sophon is revealed to the whole world. It just like, remember how it just spreads over the whole world.
We're jumping ahead a bit.
We are. I just have to say,
that's the final scene of the game, so I can understand it.
Yeah. I'm jumping to that because that was also one of the scenes that made me really bothered by like the difference between the book and the show. It's just because it made a lot of sense in the book on why that never happened in the book, is because it happens once. They say it right then. It's like it happens right there. It's like, you are bugs. But the book in the second one makes it extremely clear that the Sophons are not unfolding anymore, and they're like very rare to see because the entire world is waiting with nuclear missiles to nail it the second it appears, because they understand that those things are like controlling like a lot of stuff, and so they have to not do stuff like that in order to prevent something like that from happening.
To not unfold?
Yeah, to not.
But they didn't unfold in the book, in the series. I'm not sure I understand.
In the TV series?
Yeah.
Yeah, when they look up in the sky and it unfolds over the whole world, and the whole world's looking up, and the eye appears and everything.
Oh, I thought that was in the game, but you're right. Now that I think back on it, yeah.
Yeah, they're sitting on the beach and they see it.
Yeah.
And I understand it's a call to the book of when the Santi, it happens to them, and there's the eye in the sky from like everything. And like I was fine with that, but I mean, I like the rules that they have in the book. Then I like it when rules can't be broken. And one of the rules is that like you got to be, the Sophons are trying to be careful because they don't want to get nuked by like the people who are going to flip out and have a military response to something like that.
Which makes sense. Speaking of responses, one of the parts in the series that I've already mentioned in our reaction video that I did not like was the flicker.
Oh, yeah.
The flicker in the book is something that's very, like, almost astrological electromagnetic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where they, like, astronomical, I should say. Astrological is a very different thing. Astronomical. But
I was going to roll with it.
I've been corrected before. But it was really something where she had to, like, tune the sensors. She had to, like, he had to call a friend and say, okay, can you tune your sensors because something's going to happen at midnight. They're like, okay, fine, whatever. And then they see this flicker, like, that's never happened. What in the world? And they get to freak out, just the few of them. And he gets to be scared. And it's a she in the series. It's kind of confusing. But in the series, the whole sky just flickers a bunch of times.
And the whole world sees it.
And the entire world, or at least the world that's in night at that time.
True.
Should... Anyway, have seen it, and like everything blacks out and flickers. Like that would cause worldwide pandemonium. Like I don't believe that they could just continue on like, oh yeah, we'll try and figure this out and not be dealing with everything. Should have advanced much faster once that happened. But after that, they were still kind of in the shadows figuring this stuff out. But like that stuff would have come to light. Like almost immediately if something like that happened.
Yeah.
I think that the scale that they did it on was just too big.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point.
It was something that really bothered right from the beginning. I was like, we're in for it. I don't know what's happening the rest of this series, but man, not great.
Oh, I know. So some of those things, like it makes for good TV show / movie effects, but it just, you can't break your rules, which is, I think it's such a key thing for authors to make rules that they like have to abide by, and like I don't know.
Sometimes in a mass series, you can create this like huge reveal or huge moment, or maybe even something that a director wants to just portray because it's cool. You introduce a few plot holes with that, but they just glance over it because it's like it's just a show. Yeah. Whereas in a book, I feel like the authors feel a lot more involved. Like they have to be. We can't break this. We have to follow these rules so that people don't, hate on the book because of it. Because I think that's something that happens more in a niche book than a massive Netflix series.
For sure. And I realized that the big part that I skipped was the ship moment.
The ship.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I'm like, oh yeah, that happens like after the ship, the whole "you are bugs" and the whole unfolding. Yep. But okay, we finally saw it. We were talking about this. This was the moment we were all waiting for.
Yes, we were predicting.
We were trying to decide how the ship would split. Like it.
Yes.
And I will say that Jaden was probably a little bit more right than me.
That I totally nailed it.
You did. But I think my physics was right in explaining it to you. But you were right. After the show, he talked to me. He's like, I think it's because like the air friction and everything.
Yeah,
like, we keep it together.
I completely agree. But I do think that
you would agree because you were the one who told me that.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I think that it was well done because you start the moment like they start to cut the ship and they're like, is it even working?
Yeah.
And like little things happen where like the hose is cut in half.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Little stuff
Which
like that
happens in the book. The hose cutting is like apart.
And so I think they did a good job of that scene. And
yeah.
it lands on the beach and then just
goes all over.
Everything's on fire.
And I'm like, wow, I guess there would be fire. Like all these things. I thought that was cool.
It was a good job. I think they did a good job of it. I think it was a fun special effect that they added.
They did make it darker than they needed to.
Yep.
The book was not that dark. There was not an entire civilization living on Judgment Day.
But it wasn't even a civilization. Okay, my complaint with this is literally in the series, it was just a bunch of preschools. It was like
in the TV show series.
Yes, 90% of the people on that boat were children.
It was horrible.
Why did they do that?
It was so unnecessary.
Like, okay, in the book, it's basically like a military ship where they're like, this is their group, and they're hunkering down and they're making decisions,
totally
battle plans and stuff. But we just kept cutting between school, cafeteria, like
it's again. This is where it bothered me so badly about the series is they went way too hard in helping you like try to be on this side of the people who betrayed the world because you're seeing that you're like, yeah, man, we're doing these terrible things to stop these people who just wanted the aliens to come to save us. They did not. They wanted the aliens to come and wipe out the whole Earth. That was the purpose.
But they specifically say in the series, too, they're like, oh, that's not going to happen. Like, they'll come and they'll save us. Like, they have conversations about that.
That's the two factions, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's the Ya Wing Jia side where she just wants them to come wipe us out.
Yeah.
And then the other side.
Nothing.
Yes, the other side, like, well, they'll come help us out. Like,
I could not get over.
It was too much.
I could not get over how dark they intentionally made that.
Yeah. And they went out of their way to do it because it is not that way in the book at all.
It's not. No, it's not. But it definitely was impactful, I guess.
It was. People were like melting. Like it was
so bad.
It was gross. It's gross. Yeah, but it was a crazy scene though. The way that it like was filmed, the way that it was cut, and everything. And setting aside that's not how the book was done, it was interesting to have those conversations, the ethical conversations, like, well, we're at war. Or, well, like, is this even humane to do at all? Like, and just these conversations like, well, we have to have this information. Like, it did lead to some interesting discussions.
I think it did, but I think they pushed it a little too far. So Augie, who's the one who's very, very dismayed by this whole situation, she built the nanofibers, and there's no way she never thought that something like this would have military application. Like, you
seem like you don't believe her.
She was working on this for long enough that she's a very smart person.
Yeah.
I'm certain it crossed her mind, or someone around the Thanksgiving dinner table said, I wonder how they're going to use this for the military.
Yeah.
Like to slice people in half. I just feel like that is it's so incredibly ignorant that it just was hard to believe. And then she's like, I saw it happen. And then she's like, she can't even think for the rest of the series. And that
they're really and they even go as far to slice a diamond block. And like the first thing anybody human thinks of with slicing stuff, like
I'd probably cut my finger in half.
Yeah, exactly. Like holy crap! Like I'm glad my hand's not in there. Like
exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, man, that would slice right through somebody's finger if they accidentally like.
Yeah. What if it's just a standing? Yep. If it's just right there, and you're just like talking, and it's like whoop.
Yeah. And when they're building the thing to slice the ship, I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
I don't know how those little guards work, but they must be made of something stronger than diamonds. Yeah, it was interesting though. The whole part was interesting, but she seemed so dismayed, and I'm going back to what you were saying, bringing it all the way back, to where the conversation they had about like, is this ethical? How can we be doing this? And then I keep forgetting, but Jin's boyfriend's name, the military commander, the Navy guy.
Yep.
He's the one who's not as bothered by it. He's basically saying like, this was a mission. Like, I'm in the Navy. I'm in the Army. People die in the Army. This is war. And he's basically saying these are traitors and they've declared war on the human race. Obviously, we have to, take action for that. And I think it's a very clear, they have this huge back and forth on it for multiple scenes. And in the real world, it's something that like war is real. War happens and it's terrible, but it's also like when there are acts of war happen, like there are casualties. Obviously that's very relevant. Like in today's day and age, like that happens and it's a terrible thing that it happens. But the ethical question is we should just not have war, not like how could you because you took action because we needed to win this war. I don't know. I think they overplayed it, I think, a little bit.
I think they did too. Yeah, I would agree with that. The last thing about the Judgment Day is in these scenes, we see the leader of the traitors. He is communicating with it. His name's Mikey?
No, it's Mike Evans.
Oh, because like, wow.
But it's Mike E. I mean, there's no way no one ever called him Mikey.
He's like Mikey after Recess, like the
just
TV
saying,
show.
The option was there.
Yeah, that
Mike
is hilarious.
E is his name.
Well, that's crazy. But
distract you for a little bit.
I know. I'm just like, wow, the leader of the people were called the Mikey. Like, who called? That's not even a serious name. It's like someone called him Marty. Yeah. He was so fearsome, and they called him Marty.
Fearless leader.
It was great. No,
are you talking about the conversations on the ship, like when he's reading the book and stuff to him?
When he's reading the book to the Santee. And I want to get your perspective from this on what did you think about this whole scene?
I thought it was really eye-opening. To, like, the lie was interesting.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, humans can lie? Like, I had no idea. Like, that changes everything. Like, we need to think about this type of thing.
Yeah.
It's surprising that it got to that point. I don't even know why he's reading him nursery rhymes. That was a little confusing to me.
Uh-huh.
I guess they just wanted to learn more about humans in general.
Correct.
But yeah, it was, I don't know, interesting. They really pushed the religious fanaticism with the my lord and like always refer to them as that. And
yeah, it was interesting. Again, Jia was calling him my lord in the series. She did not do that in the book a single time. Like, but Mikey was.
We got to keep it going.
I know, we got to keep it going. But this is something though that starts covering the second book. The very beginning of the second book, you're actually hearing someone's reading nursery rhymes to the Santee, and it's not nursery rhymes. It's like the story of the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood.
Gotcha.
And lies.
Which is a nursery rhyme, isn't it?
I don't think it's a rhyme. I think it's just a fable.
Oh.
Yeah, or something like
that.
Anyway.
That's an interesting.
Oh no! It's the Brothers Grimm stories. Because he's reading them in the book. He has the book in the series. He's like reading all them. They don't call them nursery rhymes.
You're right.
Though. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. But anyways, I know why.
I'll think about that a little bit later.
Think about it. But
please tell me if you know, so it doesn't bother me longer.
I know. So in the book, what happens is like they're reading these stories to the Santee and teaching them, and that's when the Santee realize like, oh, like humans can lie. Like, what's a lie? And this moment, I actually really loved in the book, and so you kind of got it early. You got it in the TV show.
Okay.
But I loved it because it made things make a lot of sense for the first book. Because after having read that first book, I'm like, wow, this is pretty great. But the Santee seem to do a lot of like just straight up telling you exactly what's going on. Because like they have a moment where they're like they find all the information, and then the Santee's like, yeah, this is our whole thing. Like, this is where we've come from. This is how we started. This is how we're going to get to you. They literally give the humans everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why in the world would they do that? That doesn't make any
Worst
sense.
strategy ever.
I know. It's just like, I'm like, it makes for a good story, but like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But it did once this happened, because then you understand like, oh, these people communicate differently. They communicate through their minds, which means that they cannot hide anything from each other. So they literally do not understand the concept of lying at all.
Deceit in general, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is really cool.
And that's something that I missed. I feel like from this point forward, and we'll talk about some of the final episodes I think are really important. This point forward, they're really moving on into the second book, I felt like.
Yes.
Because a lot of this stuff, I was watching with my wife for the most part. She was just like, well, like, how does that connect? And I'm like, I don't even know.
I'm not there yet.
I swear I've never seen or read this part before.
I'm not even sure if this is in the books at all.
I don't know what's going on. It's new to me too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's why I was curious. I'm like, what did you think about that? But I thought that was interesting. Another scene that they took directly from the second book was the conversation between Jia and Saul, when they're having that conversation in the cemetery. And it has a scene, it actually has a close-up scene on a bug, like crawling up a cemetery, like a stone head. And that's the exact like scene of how the second book starts. It describes a bug going up like a headstone.
It's pretty cool.
Which was a cool callback to it. I thought that was neat. And I actually thought that once they started getting into the second book, those last few episodes, for me, were the first episodes that I started feeling really drawn into the show.
I agree.
Yeah. Which is what I wanted to hear from you, because I'm like, did you start feeling more drawn into those episodes?
Yeah, even though I hadn't read or like connected to those parts of the story, I still feel like that was a part, like the last, I would say 2 or 3 episodes where it was like, okay, what's going on? Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to resolve this? And I think that was more interesting.
Started to feel more on point, more like a show. A show
like
that I would enjoy.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting into those episodes, though, I do think the most interesting physics-y part of it was like they get this council together and like, how do we solve this problem? They're coming to us. They're going to be here in 400 years. They're traveling at 1% the speed of light. Like, there's your problem. Go. I love that. I don't know if you've seen like it's like Apollo 11 where they're like, they dump all this stuff on the table to solve this problem super fast. They're like, this is all the materials they have. How can we build something that like, it was awesome. That's like so cool. Such a cool scene.
Yeah.
But similar here, they're like, here's the group of people. Here's the problem. Ready, go. I've always wanted to be one of those people.
Yeah. But it does sound so exciting. Makes you want to be a scientist.
Exactly. But most of them were like, it's impossible, whatever. And they're like, well, give us 20 years and then we'll figure something out. And Jin comes in with her idea. She presents her idea, and her idea is this probe. She says, I can get this probe. She thinks she says it's 1,000 kilograms, if I remember correctly.
Uh-huh.
And that will come into effect later when I mention something else. But and she says, okay, based on all these calculations, boom, 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 we have to launch 11 thermonuclear bombs, or 1,000 of them, and then place them along this line and create this big sail.
Did you catch that they call them atom bombs at one point?
I did not catch that.
Same thing.
I'm
sorry, just had to throw that in there.
We're 1-1.
And
we're 1-1.
I nearly jumped out of my seat. There you go, Jaden. Like, it's called an atom bomb as well.
I also looked that one up after, and I will eat my words on that one. But
atom bombs, nuclear bombs, same thing.
They all work with the explosion of that stuff, nuclear something.
Yeah.
But
it is the radiation that's propelling them.
Yes, the radiation wave, I think she calls it.
Yep.
And the sail catches that wave and just continues one to one, and it keeps accelerating because you're in space, so like the friction and all that stuff. You're just building momentum.
Yep.
And I stopped there, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me as in, like, that's super cool? Or, like...
It's super cool and super creative and also ridiculous. I see that... I literally, I was like...
Did you literally pause and say that?
I didn't pause, but I mentioned it over the top of... I missed probably the next sentence because I mentioned it to my wife. Because I was like... I'm in the camp of the guys sitting around the table reading this report thinking that's a very creative idea, but we have no reason to do this. It's insane. Like, why are we launching a bunch of bombs into space with who knows what type of repercussions into the solar system, and like all these explosions that push matter in all directions, not just one. It's not like... It seems incredibly dangerous, but also so risky. And so like the argument that they made, bringing it back, the argument that they made was, why don't we just wait 15 years for our technology to advance enough that we can come up with a real plan that gets something to the speed of light, instead of hacking something together with what we have right now when we have 400 years.
Oh, dude, this kind of bothered me a little bit too, because they're like, man, we have to do this right now. We've got to use will, and we got to do all these things. And I'm like, okay, guys, like, slow down. Like, it's not like if we don't release it now, we're only going to catch them a year before they get here. Like it's...
I'm still confused by the timeline, and it's something I need to look up. And maybe someone in the comments can clarify it for me.
Is it going to be
But they specifically said that if they can get something to 1% the speed of light, it would intercept the Santi in 398 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Earth, wherever they are, how does that make sense? What am I missing?
Dude,
why wouldn't they meet somewhere in the middle?
It's got to be relativity or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Understand it.
I'm not going to go into that because I don't understand either, but...
I wanted to mention it because I want someone to tell me why.
Yeah, someone should tell you why, but all I know is I've seen Interstellar, and I know that science and space does weird things with time.
It's so confusing.
In the documentary Interstellar, this has happened.
Honestly, I never understand those scenes either. Like when someone comes back from a trip into space, like Interstellar, and he comes back and like generations have passed. I'm like, don't you have a biological clock? Your cells reproduce at the same rate. Shouldn't you get old just as fast? I don't know anything.
That's the thing that's most
I don't know
mind-blowing,
anything.
Jaden.
It's so confusing to me.
It's because time is relative, Jaden.
It's not time. It's not... Your body doesn't age by going around the sun. Your body ages by performing bodily functions.
Isn't that amazing? It doesn't make any sense, but it happens that way. It literally does. It is crazy. We will have to read the book Project Hail Mary at some point, and that one goes some deep into some science like that, and it's cool.
I'll bring
it
really back
cool.
with one statement that Jin makes at one point when they say, "Do you understand the higher dimensions?" And she's like, well, about as well as anybody understands it, because nobody understands that stuff. Like, okay, maybe that makes me feel a little bit better, because I'm looking at this relativity stuff, and I'm like, it just makes no sense to me at all. Like, I'm with you 100%.
All I know is that it's real. It is like a proven thing. Like, it happens. It's weird. It's super weird.
Time dilation or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I watched a minute physics video on it the other day.
Minute physics, what's that?
Have you never heard of minute physics? Oh my gosh. Are you an actual nerd? Or are you just...
I took real classes, not YouTube minute-long shorts.
I only went to physics minutes at a time.
You're like, I'm only going to pay attention for the next 60 seconds.
So you better make it good. No, dude, Minute Physics is a big YouTube channel where they describe like a bunch of physics concepts and go through them in like ways that like make a lot of sense. I don't know. They have some really cool questions they ask. Like if you some of them are funny, but they answer the question right. Like if you run through the rain versus walk through the rain, which one will you be more wet? And the answer is like you run because you're going to get the same wet either way. The running will be less time in the rain.
Less time in the rain, but higher surface area of impact.
We'll have to watch the minute physics.
It depends. It depends on the wind and the rate of the rain.
Now I'm going to start going into this just for a split second. No, okay. Assume that every single time a water droplet falls from the sky, it is going to be replaced by another one. So you can almost pretend like the water droplets are frozen in space of time. Therefore, as you are running, you are spending less time in the time of the water and splash zone than you are walking. Either way, you're going to hit the same water droplets walking forward slowly as you would running forward. It's kind of like a snowplow is going to get the same amount of snow no matter what, if it's going fast or slow.
Is that how they explained it in the minute video? With the snowplow?
Yep. It is a very good explanation. And I like those videos. I think they're pretty legit.
That is pretty legit.
I know. I was impressed. Mythbusters disagrees, though, I'm sure.
Mythbusters was very inconclusive, I'll be honest. They're trying to weigh their clothes after running through the rain. It was funny.
Well, they've got to make it interesting.
It was interesting. I learned nothing, though.
Well, there you go. You got a minute video.
I will probably lose a bunch of free time to these minute physics.
They're actually really good, dude. They're really good. I've watched a bunch of them. So
there needs to be like homework for our episodes then. So we're like ready to go. We're like, guess what? 3 body problem solved.
Oh yeah, we know how to fix it. The answer is can't be.
So I will say the bomb and the probe felt like a stretch. I know I haven't gotten to that part in the book, but I was just like, why not wait?
I have not gotten to that part of the book either. I'm not even sure if it's in the book. It could be in the 3rd book. Don't tell me if it's in the book or not, commenters, but give me the nod. I'm not there yet.
It was something that really, it shook me so much that I mentioned it tomorrow. I was like, that's insane. Like, it's super creative. I'm not discounting the fact that she really brilliantly solved the issue of how do we get something to the speed of 1% the speed of light. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I'm like, creative, implausible. Just because it works in physics does not mean it's something that we should do as a plan.
So you were then happy that it didn't work because it...
I wasn't happy that it didn't work. Just kidding. I'm not that guy. I just think that the amount of money they spent I love the fact they're like, think about the cost of something like this. Like, we're going to be... And they're like, well, it's going to be worth it. Like, we're going to spend money on whatever solution. Like, we just throw money at this. I don't care what it costs. I'm like, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
But apparently that's how it works in Fantasyland 3-body problem world. So
at least the TV show. So.
And then you're right. They had to, like, conveniently, Will was there, like, ready to go and sacrifice. And then I'm like, they can only take his brain? First of all, kind of creepy. Yep. Second of all,
what?
We're talking about a 1,000-kilogram payload on this probe. 1,000 kilograms. And he's a skinny dude. We're talking probably 55, maybe 60 kilograms. Maybe.
Man, if you did that, you would only meet them 30 days later. Like
exactly. Just get a bigger bomb.
Yeah. For Santi will speed up in time and somehow arrive in 30 days instead of 400 years. Like,
or you could just have 1,007 nuclear explosions and it would have been fine. And he could have taken his whole body.
Dude. I thought about that.
Because she's like, it takes exactly 1,000 nuclear explosions to 0.00113. I'm like, 1,000. That's a very convenient number. Like, exactly 1,000.
Everybody knows there's only 1,000 nukes in the entire world.
Oh yes, common knowledge. Yep. I went and counted all of Russia's nukes, and that's exactly how many we have.
So I only used Russia's.
It did feel like she's super exact with her speed of light calculation, but she's like exactly 1,000 nukes. Like,
yes. So
how effective was this? It seemed like this is in a brainstorming, but she had like a 17-page report on it. So
yeah,
there were parts of that I was like, huh?
So you're telling me you weren't blown away by it?
I will say it was very creative, and I was like, yeah. That's crazy. I almost missed that pun.
Yeah, I know. I was like, you missed it. You
got
missed
it. Came back around. But man, it felt like they were trying to be too crazy with it. I don't know. I was like, I'm in the camp of wait 15 years for technology and then do something realistically that has a chance of success.
It did pull at your heartstrings, though, right? Like, even with it not working and everything, like. Then you just sit there at the end of the episode like, what would that be like to have a working brain that's just in a coma for endless amounts of years?
Yeah, he's just floating into space. His brain is
forever.
Just floating through space forever. Until it lands into some sun.
If it ever does, because the way that they were calculating it, they're like, yeah, he'll be exiting the Milky Way in a long time. And like, holy crap, man. That sounds worse than death.
Well, he's going pretty fast.
I know. The whole time I was just thinking, I'm like, well, maybe like the machine will run out of energy at some point and like break, hopefully. So,
not that he's gonna care. He's not conscious.
But that's the question that the show was making. Like, he was saying, he's like, well, I'm dead anyways, right? Or like, he's like, but like, I'm not conscious, so I'm basically dead. He's like, well, like,
yeah.
How does that work? You're not dead if you're like in a coma. What is that like? People who are in a coma for like 3 months sometimes have experiences like, yeah, I felt like I was having a dream where I was strapped in a bed and I couldn't move for a long time. Is that how you feel when you're in like a brain coma, flying through space forever?
In the spirit of the fact that we like to make a lot of conjectures on this show that we have very little actual context about, I have heard that like dreaming over the course of a night doesn't happen over the course of an entire night. It happens in a very, very, very short period of time.
Yeah.
During the night. So like over your whole night you're asleep, you dream over the course of like a couple of minutes maximum. Like all of the dreams that you have, it happens so fast. So I almost feel like if you said like someone like, oh, I felt like I was, in strapped to a bed or this, that it wouldn't have been a 3-week long experience. It would have been something that's like just on those edges of consciousness where you start to have those dreams. Everything else, blank slate, nothing.
True. Yeah, I don't know. If any of you have had a coma before, let us know.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Interesting.
What that's
I'm
like.
Sorry that happened.
I'm just kidding.
But it does seem to me like he's completely like zero. Nothing. Like he can be resuscitated, but he's not. There's no brain activity at all. Because any brain activity would be inherently degenerative. That's my theory.
Oh, man. But isn't the idea of like cryo-freezing is that you've frozen things like not that they stop, but like that they're like
1,000 times slower is what they say.
Yeah, slower.
Like their body just moves 1,000 times slower.
Yeah, dude. That's just crazy. I don't know. It's creepy. It's really creepy.
It's pretty creepy. And the fact that it's floating out forever, also super creepy.
Also, the music that they had in the background for that, so good. Like I'm a big soundtrack junkie, and I thought that was probably like pretty on point. I liked it. It was good. I'm like, I might have to look up this song. But it was good. Okay, last thing I wanted to chat about is the Wall Facer project.
You're going to have to explain this more to me than the show did, because I was confused.
Yeah, so tell me what you know and what you got. So you've read the book, but you haven't read the part when you read
the first book.
I know. You've read the first book. You had the context of the first book.
Yep.
And so even with the context of the first book, you still did not get the Wall Facer project. It is in the second book, but I was just curious of like, so what did you understand?
Conceptually, you need to make a plan to defeat Trisolarans or Santi without telling anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Honestly, they did not make this. I was a little bit bothered by this too. They didn't make this near as big a deal. This is the second book. Like, at least for the first half that I've read, is the Wall Facer project, the whole conversation. And it's actually 5 people that they introduce in the Wall Facer project. They actually, this whole episode is super similar. Probably one of the closest to the book, which is crazy. It's not Saul in the book. It's another Chinese character. But he's like, his girlfriend dies like in the car accident. She gets hit. Then he's flown off in a jet. He's actually flown off in a military jet, and I think he like throws up and stuff. Unless I'm getting mixed up with another show or book. But then he like arrives. Like, he's like, I don't know where I'm at. He's at the UN in New York. And then they introduce him as the 5th Wall Facer, and he's like, what?
But he doesn't want to be.
He definitely doesn't want to be. Like, not even close. He's not even like really. I mean, he is a little bit of a scientist, but like not really in the book. And they're like, yeah, you're going to be a Wall Facer. And he tells everyone no. And what's really cool, so the whole idea of a Wall Facer, they talk about this in the show, is that your goal is, since the Santi
can't read minds,
cannot read minds, but they can see everything, they've decided that the only way to beat them is to have 5 different people working on their 5 separate plans, so hopefully one of them work. And they have pretty much the power of the entire world behind them to be able to do whatever they want to execute their plan. And so they talk about this. It's kind of a cool idea.
That's way cool.
Yeah, it's way cool. And did you catch that in the show? Like,
not the resources thing. Maybe I just missed the conversation.
I thought they would, because they didn't make it as big of a deal like in the show. But in the book, like, they make it super clear. Like, you have the power to do pretty much anything, and we will not question you. Like, we will just say, like, wow, it's part of the Wall Facer project. And so then they talk about this in the show too, but the book really points this out. Like, it is really funny because he denies it, and they're like, okay, yeah, sure. And
that's part of the plan.
It's part of the plan. Yeah, got it. And he talks about the smile, but the book calls it the Wall Facer smile. There's like, everybody has this Wall Facer smile where they just kind of look at you no matter what you say, and they're like, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing. And so like, everyone's like, no, I'm like, and it can drive you crazy, because like, nobody actually believes anything that you're doing at face value, because they always think you have stuff behind it.
It's all part of the plan.
Yep. And so the book really focuses on the mental toll that takes on these 5 people.
It is brutal.
It is really cool. Like, a really cool idea.
I'm going to have to read that.
I was blown away with it. And then, a little bit of a spoiler for the second book. Second book starts with it, though. There are Wall Facers and there are Wall Breakers as well. And the Santi have like said, we are creating 5 people who are going to be our Wall Breakers, and their job will be to just destroy these Wall Facers completely.
That's crazy.
It is really, really cool.
It's weird to have this chess match between 2 people that are 400 light years apart. How many would it be if they're going at 1% the speed of light? Be 4 light years?
I don't know. Well, no.
Maybe 4 light years away.
Yeah, you're 1% the speed of light. Yep. That would make sense. Yeah. So anyways, I thought that was really cool. I thought they did a pretty all right job on that last episode. Yeah. I think that if they made that a little bit more clear, like, no, like, you have the power of the whole world behind you.
And that would have been a cooler way to end it. I don't know.
Yeah.
They had more clarity on that.
Totally. And then his whole idea of like, I don't accept it. Like, I'm like, it was just funny to see that whole thing, because I'm like, no, like, it makes sense, like the way he's doing it and the way what they're doing. I just didn't think that people would understand.
I did not get it.
Like, why he denies it and he's still getting shot and he's still like doing all these things. People are still hanging around him. Like, I feel like they didn't play that up enough.
Yeah. I agree with you. So overall, everything you saw, everything you've read to this point, how do you feel?
I would say I'd probably give this a 7 out of 10. I'm going to give this a rating. 7 out of 10.
7.0?
7.0. So I would give it a 7 because there are a lot of parts that I don't think would make sense for the casual viewer. And coming from the viewpoint of someone who has read first book and half of the second book, I didn't connect as well as I did in the book with the story and the immensity of it all as I did like in the book. Like I thought the book just conveys this sense of like awe, wonder, and just like that is so smart. You just feel like it's just smart. But this one just feels a little bit like a lot bit more dark and a lot more just like the whole world is like trying to say like we should let these people come in or we should like fight them off. I don't know. It just didn't convey the same sense that I loved from the book.
Yeah.
And it kind of bothered me about that. Also, just wasn't very engaging at times. Like I had a hard time wanting to come back to watch another episode. I was like trying to get through it for the podcast and everything, but it was taking me some time. So overall, like I'd give it a 7. That is barely at my, I would recommend to someone. Anything below a 7, we usually say we wouldn't recommend to someone. But 7 is on the line for me. And so hopefully it improves in the future. I think I'd probably watch the second season still. But we'll see how this goes.
I gave it a 6.4.
Wow.
And surprisingly close to your rating, actually. Sometimes we've been pretty far apart, especially with TV shows. The reason I say 6.4 is I put it just below the recommendation line. I set it kind of raw entertainment value at like a 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
And then what knocked it down was the engagement. I do feel like they left it in weird places. There was like some episodes were just all big climax moments, and some episodes were like a lot of just bland conversations. And it just seemed like it wasn't moving along at a regular pace, which kind of keeps me from coming back. No way I would have finished this series in like a week if we hadn't had the podcast. It probably would have been like, oh, we should watch that because we have nothing else to watch, you know? It was one of those.
Yep.
And it also brought it down for me because I think they way overplayed the dark elements of like, hey, all these children are on the ship and we're gonna slice them all in half.
Dude.
Like that was terrible, and I don't think that was necessary.
Nope.
And the other thing, they also way overplayed the gory elements of it. And I'm like, that's shocking, and maybe it's just like really intense for some viewers, but for me, it's just like, oh, it's a little off-putting.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I can't have a bowl of ice cream with this show. What am I supposed to do? So I think that is one of the other reasons why I'm like, it kept knocking it down. And I hate when it starts at a level of like the story potential and then just keeps getting knocked down by what I feel like are editorial choices and other things. And I'm like, it's making it harder. There are more hurdles to get over to make this a recommendable. So I have it as a 6.4.
Yep. Okay. Well, cool. Well, there you have it. Make sure you subscribe and that you like this video. Comment. Let us know what you thought. We'll be having a lot more movie reviews, TV shows, also our books. We do a ton of book reviews. The Three Body Problem, of course, was a book first. We will be going into, at some point, the second book in the series. Yep. Probably won't be for a little bit, but if you subscribe, you won't miss it.
Absolutely. So we'll catch you in the next one.